Hi guys, it's Quinn here. If you appreciate my content, consider hitting the like button. It's the only way the YouTube algorithm notices me. So you guys probably know by now that everything Dune related excites me. And yesterday we got a nice little bit of information about the upcoming Dune Part 2. Several promo images were released, as well as 10 minutes of the movie being shown at a convention. Now, unfortunately, I was not there to see the first 10 minutes of the movie, but people that were present have reported on what they saw. And that's what we'll talk about in this video. Now, just a heads up, I'm getting my information from DuneNewsNet.com. Definitely check out this website, definitely follow their Twitter account. It is a great source of information to help you stay updated on all things Dune related. So apparently, 3 different scenes were shown. The movie starts on Kitan. This is, of course, the Imperial homeworld, the dwelling place of Emperor Shaddam IV, Patriarch of House Carino and ruler of the human universe. In the first movie, Shaddam is never seen, and yet he is omnipresent. His shadow looms over the entire movie. He's almost like an unseen, godlike figure, pulling everyone else's strings. But in Dune Part 2, we finally get to see him for what he really is, a man. But first, we see Princess Irulan, and actually, she is narrating into her dictation device. She talks about the destruction of House Atreides, and she talks about the secrets surrounding the events leading up to their destruction. Now, this is quite awesome for people like me who are very connected to the books, because as anybody that's read the books knows, the very first words that we ever read in Dune are the words of the Princess Irulan. A beginning is the time for taking the most delicate care that the balances are correct. This, every sister of the Bene Gesserit knows. To begin your study of the life of Muad'Dib, then take care that you first place him in his time, born in the 57th year of the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV, and take the most special care that you locate Muad'Dib in his place, the planet Arrakis. Do not be deceived by the fact that he was born on Caladan and lived his first 15 years there. Arrakis, the planet known as Dune, is forever his place. And that is from the Manual of Muad'Dib by the Princess Irulan. A lot of the Dune chapters open with quotes from books that the Princess Irulan has written about Paul Atreides, has written about Arrakis and the events that took place there. Irulan is not just some aloof princess, she is in fact a scholar, and she's also trained by the Bene Gesserit. Her Bene Gesserit skills are not on par with Jessica, and certainly not on par with the Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohayim, but she does have certain skills and certain knowledge. So it's very exciting to see that the aspect of Irulan as a scholar is being used in the Villeneuve movie. Right, so later we see the Emperor Shaddam Carino IV. Right, so this movie is opening with House Carino. We're seeing Irulan, we're seeing Shaddam Carino IV, played by Christopher Walken, of course, and he is in his garden playing chess with his daughter, Princess Irulan. And it seems that in this scene that the Princess Irulan is frustrated with her father's passivity about the events surrounding House Atreides, because she has the creeping suspicion that House Harkonnen is behind all of this. Now, Irulan may very well suspect the truth, but she can't outright say it, especially not now. And the truth is, of course, that Shaddam IV is actually the major force behind all of this. Yes, the Harkonnens and the Atreides have this feud that goes back a long time, but that's not the reason this happened. This happened because the Emperor specifically was threatened by House Atreides, and he used the Baron as a pawn to get rid of them. The Emperor is immensely powerful and immensely wealthy, but he can't do something like outright kill one of the great houses off out in the open, because this would set off the other great houses. It's a little bit complex, but essentially you have the Lanzarad, and this is the collection of the great houses within the Dune universe, with the Emperor at the head, and each one of these great houses has a certain amount of power. If the Emperor killed one of them, none of the others would feel safe. It would create chaos. So the Emperor had to be very, very sneaky with the elimination of House Atreides. and the Harkonnen-Atreides feud was a great cover. So what happens here is essentially the Emperor's plan intersects with the Bene Gesserit plan, which has already been thrown off by the actions of the Lady Jessica in having a son instead of having the daughter that she was commanded to by the Bene Gesserit, and then going to Arrakis and then having his powers be activated by the spice, enabling him to survive the coup and go out into the desert and gain the power of the Fremen. So it's a huge clash of everybody's plans kind of getting jumbled up. And it all started with the Emperor. You see, if Paul had never gone to Arrakis, never began consuming spice on the regular, Jessica still would have eventually had to tell the Bene Gesserit about him, or they would have eventually found out about him, and they would have still eventually tested him to see if he was the Kwisatz Haderach or not. Because it all happened on Dune, beyond their control, well, you know what happens if you read the book, but let's not spoil it for people that haven't. So it looks like we'll have a pretty interesting scene with Irulan and her father on Kitan. That'll be awesome to see. And then the next scene, we get Arrakis, where the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen is reinstating Raban as the planet's governor. So there's a huge ceremony that takes place in front of the massive Harkonnen army. And apparently this is where it shows Dune Part 2. We see the big logo, Dune Part 2. Now, if you remember, at the end of Dune Part 1, the Baron told Raban to really squeeze the people of Arrakis. Really push them. And that's exactly what he's going to be doing. He is quite a ruthless leader. And the way he leads and the way he rules is in perfect contrast with the way the Atreides lead and rule through, like building trust and loyalty. The Harkonnens are all about servitude and punishment. No one harbors any goodwill for them. They're extremely wealthy, but no one likes them because they kind of just suck. So I'm definitely excited to see more of the Baron Harkonnen in Dune Part 2. There wasn't enough of him in the first movie, and I'm also excited to see Dave Bautista show some more of his acting chops in this movie as the Beast Raban. So in the next scene, we get back to Jessica, Paul, and the Fremen, and apparently in this scene, Paul is heard talking to his future sister, the unborn child that the Lady Jessica carries within her, and this is of course Aaliyah. So they have not cut Aaliyah from this movie. They, of course, would never cut Aaliyah from this movie. She's such an important character, not just in this first book, but certainly in Dune Messiah and certainly in Children of Dune. You cannot tell the story of the saga of Dune without the character Aaliyah. To even suggest that she would be cut is utterly ridiculous, considering how much Villeneuve seems to respect the source material. So essentially in this scene, we see a clash between the Fremen and the Harkonnens. So we have Chani and Stilgar on a sandbank together with a group of Fremen, and on the other side a Harkonnen ship lands and deploys its soldiers. The Fremen go into hiding as those soldiers begin to search for them. So then soon after this, these Harkonnen soldiers start to hear a noise from an activated thumper. And basically what's going on here is that the Fremen have planted a thumper in an attempt to summon a worm that's going to come and eat those Harkonnens. But the Harkonnens manage to successfully destroy this thumper, but then they just start getting taken down one by one with headshots. And then apparently Paul and Jessica get spotted, and Paul starts fighting one of the Harkonnen soldiers. Another one sneaks up behind him, and then Paul is saved by Jessica. Now, I'm sure this is going to be a great action sequence to see when it comes out. The thing about this is, I love seeing Jessica still fighting while pregnant, because as a Bene Gesserit woman, of course she would be able to do that with pretty much ease, because the Bene Gesserit have what is known as the Weirding Way. It is a special form of martial arts that allows them to move just seamlessly, very fast, very gracefully. And it is in fact Jessica's Weirding Way that saves her in the desert. It's because of the fact that Stilgar recognizes that she has the Weirding Way, that she is useful to them, because ultimately the Fremen are a utilitarian society. They don't waste things, and your water belongs to the tribe. So if you are not of use to the tribe, then you got to get out of here, and we're going to take that water and give it to someone that can be of more use. Because you see, in the desert, water is everything. If you're carrying around water in the deep deserts of Arrakis, they say, why would you carry around such wealth in the desert? Water is everything. Water is life. And it goes beyond that, even to a more spiritual level. But anyway, it can't be stated how capable Jessica is and how much of an asset that she could be potentially to the Fremen if she could ever actually become fully allegiant to the Fremen instead of being allegiant to House Atreides and the Bene Gesserit. Which, you know, Jessica betrayed the Bene Gesserit, but she still has some Bene Gesserit conditioning, and that comes out in the later books, especially Children of Dune mostly. We see that she still has some of that Bene Gesserit conditioning. She's still at heart a Bene Gesserit, even though at this point in the book, she is Fremen, she is Atreides. Jessica is a very layered and complex character with a lot of nuances happening, and I really, really love the character of Jessica as she is presented in the Dune books, and especially Children of Dune. We learn a lot more about who Jessica actually is in Children of Dune, and it's also really interesting in the later books, which are thousands of years in the future, how future Bene Gesserit contextualize Jessica and her actions on Dune, because of course these things ring out into the far distant future. Things that happen on Arrakis have huge implications on the entire universe and its future, because Arrakis is the center of spice production, which is the fuel of the universe, so everything kind of has this massive ripple effect. So they also showed 2 later scenes in the movie. One of them where Paul and Chani sit and Paul is trying to explain to her the nature of his homeworld Caladan, which is a water planet, and she doesn't understand that a whole planet could be full of water. That makes sense to me because in Dune Messiah there is a character that was a Fremen that talks about seeing an ocean for the first time, and how the Fremen didn't even really have a word for drown before Paul Atreides came to Arrakis. So essentially this is kind of a romantic scene between Paul and Chani where he's trying to explain Caladan to her, and he also apparently asks her if Stilgar will teach him to ride sandworms, and Chani responds that he is not yet Fremen, so he has to wait a little bit. So in the book, this happens like way into things, but I'm not sure where it happens in the movie, but I guess we'll have to see, because we're also shown the scene where Paul does ride the sandworm. So apparently it's Stilgar cautioning Paul, like we saw in the trailer basically. We see Chani and she's nervous, and we see fellow Fremen maybe mocking Paul from afar, and then he climbs up on a large dune and places the thumper, and we see this huge worm sign forming in like the distance, and even Stilgar is all like, oh my god, it's big, because in the book when Paul's sandworm comes, it's like huge, it's like one of the biggest they've ever seen. So it's like actually Shai Hulud coming out of the desert maybe. So as the sandworm approaches, the sand around begins to sink, and Paul wields his maker hooks. They use the maker hooks to like kind of cling on to the worm's segments and kind of get in there, and they can use the maker hooks to like steer the worm in any direction, because it's kind of like the blasting sand that irritates them and makes them rise and turn and do whatever you want them to do. So after a while, Paul manages to get himself onto like the sandworm by using the maker hooks, and little by little he gains balance and rises to a standing position, and all the other Fremen cheer because he has mounted the sandworm. It's kind of a rite of passage for, you know, Fremen youth to eventually mount the sandworm and become a true Fremen. So Paul has done this, and this represents Paul being accepted by the Fremen finally as an actual Fremen. Now I know some of you Dune scholars out there know it's debatable whether or not Paul ever actually became a true Fremen, but we'll just leave that right there. So I'm obviously extremely excited for Dune Part 2. I cannot wait to see it in theaters next year. It's a little sad we didn't get it this year, but it's okay, it's coming out soon. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what all of your thoughts are on all of this new Dune stuff that's come out. One more thing before we go, my campaign for my new graphic novel has 7 days to go. 7 more days to back the campaign. Click the link in the description if you are interested in learning more about it. Thanks guys.